You're listening to the Bird Dog Babe podcast with my mom, Courtney Bastion.
If you're not going to use the whole bird and you just want like the breast, throw that carcass into a pot of boiling water with some veggies in it and cook it all day long and make a really good bone broth. All that collagen will come out. It's good for your hair. It's good for your nails. It's good for you. It's just good stuff. It tastes good. It's good stock for soups.
Hey, bird dog babes. My name is Courtney Bastion, and I am obsessed with all things bird dogs. And I'm here with you to share the stories, experiences, knowledge, and opinions from the women and a few guys in the industry that are killing it. I'm a Wisconsin girl living in a Montana world. I'm mom and two incredible kiddos, wife and occasional assistant to a pro gun dog trainer, traveling the U.S. talking about canine nutrition while hunting, breeding, and competing with my German wire hair pointers and Bracco Italianos. As someone who started hunting later in life because I wanted to give my dogs the opportunity to do what they were bred to do, I'm here to help inspire, educate, and connect women to get their bird dogs out in the field and experience a bond like no other. So pour yourself a glass of wine and get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn. This is the Bird Dog Babe podcast. Hey y'all, so last week I announced a giveaway for 2 large bags of Purina Pro Plan as a follow-up to episode 27 with Dr. Callie Harris on senior dog nutrition. My son Burke went through all the photos submitted and chose his favorites. So our winner on Instagram is Sally Yanuzzi, and our winner on Facebook is Pamela Patton. I will be contacting you both to get your mailing information. And big thanks to Purina Pro Plan, the best source of nutrition for our dogs and what's been fueling my crew. I think I'm at around 35 days out on public land so far this year. So that Pro Plan Sport 3020 is proving itself to keeping my dogs fueled, ready, and looking great. Today we have Margie Nelson of Wyld Gourmet. That's Wyld with a Y. I swear her Instagram page could make a non-game bird or animal eater into a big fan. What I love most about Margie's approach is her heritage and generations of hunting and cooking wild game recipes. She doesn't necessarily use recipes, she determines how to prepare and what to supplement with just by her initial taste of the animal. Margie provides so much insight in this episode, and I know you're going to enjoy it as much as I have. All right, let's get after it. Thank you to sponsor Dakota 283, unparalleled protection for traveling to and from your favorite hunting spot. Dakota 283 kennels are premium quality roto-mold with recessed handles on top for convenient and safe tie-down and makes it easy to lift up into the truck. I love the secure door frame with high security locks so I know my dogs are safe when I need to stop for fuel. An added bonus is the drain hole in the back, which makes cleaning a breeze when your dog has been run hard and put away wet. Head over to Dakota283.com and use promo code BirdDogBabe for a 10% discount. Thanks to sponsor Xcel Shooting Sports, elite dealer of Caesar Guarini, Fab Arm, and Siren shotguns. Siren is the world's only full line of shotguns created for the female competitor, hunter, and shotgun enthusiast. Xcel is one of only 4 demo centers west of the Mississippi. They give you the opportunity to actually try out a gun before you walk out the door with it. As an elite dealer for Caesar Guarini, Xcel offers their customers unlimited pit stops of free service and tune-ups on all shotguns. A great way to have your gun in top condition for the upcoming hunting or target season. In addition, they're offering an exclusive deal to all of the Bird Dog Babe listeners for a free gun slip with each purchase, a $90 value. Welcome, Margie. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you. This is awesome.
I've known you through being in the Proist Posse with me for the past several months here. I kind of want to hear your story, Margie, of you growing up and where hunting came into your life and with your kids and how you raised them with hunting, because you are deep into it and I love your story. So can you share a little bit of that with us?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I grew up here in Livingston, Montana, and I'm like fourth generation family that homesteaded here from Norway in this general area. And we just always hunted. There was always something going on. There was a gun room, and you had to go through my bedroom to get into the gun room, and it was never taboo. It was just had its thing. You loaded ammo in there, and you built guns in there, and you cleaned guns in there, and you stored guns in there, but you never went in there unless you were going to use those guns. And I was a little girl, and it never occurred to me to go in there unless we were going to go hunting or I was told to. Or unless somebody else was in there. And we just hunted all the time. And I was always with my grandpa and my dad out hunting. And my mom, God bless her heart, I call my grandma Mom. I always did. They raised me. So it was my grandpa, my dad, and my mom, who was actually my grandma. So my grandma mom, would always cook this meat, but she grew up during the Depression. And meat was one of those things that you had to really cook thoroughly because of tularemia, which is in rabbits, and trichinosis, which is in bear and hogs, and they just kind of thought it was in everything. So they cooked the heck out of food and meat, and I just thought there had to be a better way. We processed everything out in the garage, the same garage that I do my processing in right now, and it's just kind of set up. It always has been set up for welding, building, fixing, everything. I mean, I have a wood stove out there that I like to can on. It's just a neat space, and it's just a neat life. And then when I had a child, I raised my son by myself. And when he was 8, he wanted to go hunt with me. All right. So I thought I'd teach him how we go hunting. And just because you're hunting doesn't mean you're going to see anything. I wasn't really about it. And I ended up calling a girlfriend who lived out in the country, and she goes, "Where are you?" And I go, "Just down the road." "Get over here." All right. So she goes, "Let's go shoot a doe out of the barn." All right. So I shot this doe out of the barn window, and the kids, Morgan and Rock, which is not my friend Nicole's daughter, Morgan, and Connor was there too. They drug this deer, and the background was Emigrant Peak. The sun was setting in their face. They're dragging this doe, and of all the pictures in the whole wide world, I wish I had that. It was just the coolest thing. That was so beautiful. And then the next day we kind of butchered up the doe a little bit just to get it home, and Rock's been on it ever since. When he hit 12 and was old enough to hunt, that was it. I had to quit. We couldn't eat, if I hunted and he hunted, oh geez, it was just too much.
So what did he hunt? What was his very first animal that he hunted?
He got a nice little buck mule deer. We G.I. Joe'd it, belly crawled up on this ridge. We saw him walk across the road. So we stopped and kind of went up on this ridge, and he shot a nice little buck with my grandpa's .270 featherweight. And
nice.
He's 26 now, so I'm not sure he was old enough to hunt, but when he was 12, he shot a nice mule deer with his bow, and he was all legal then. It's Montana.
Yeah, right.
They have that take your kids hunting deal. So when they're 10 years old, you can take them hunting. Well, they didn't have that then. We just, just kind of made up our own little thing and, use my tag.
Montana, the state really embraces that. That's what I love about it. Tomorrow is a Thursday, and our son in first grade, the whole school of Potomac has off Thursday. They always have off on Fridays. We asked why don't they have school on Thursday? And they said, well, it's Thursday and Friday are the 2 youth hunting openers.
Oh yeah.
I think that's amazing.
And they used to have it when it was PIR days. If they had PIR days at the high school, they would put the youth hunting days when those kids were home. With COVID, who knows when PIR would be anyway. But right. They always did a good job of that, so the kids can get out there and get that experience. and it's awesome. And Rock's been, he was 12 to 15. He had to go with me because he didn't have a driver's license.
Yeah.
And then after that, him and his friends been hunting on their own. And now I have to remind him when we go hunt together that I might have been the person who taught him a lot of this stuff. He does know a lot all on his own, but I don't need instruction from my 26-year-old child. And if I do, I'll ask for it.
I love it. I love it. So do you go hunting with him and his buddies?
I've gone hunting with him and his buddies a lot. I've taken his buddies. There's so many pictures of me and his buddies. Him and his girlfriend and I, the other night, we were out, and last night we went out in the rain. It was torrential rain here. And he was getting off work, and he said, do you want to go out and see if we can get an antelope? And I'm like, sure. So we drove out on property, and sure, it's raining so hard. So of course we see antelope 100 yards from the road. Oh, good Lord. And we looked at them, and they were all does, and I'm happy as heck to get a doe. They were all bedded down, so they were low, and I'm not really fond of that unless I'm desperate. So I just took a pass because it was really raining. Would have been the easiest thing in the world, but it was really raining and they were bedded down. And I actually went out to the same property this morning, and I missed them. I drove by them one time, turned around, came back, and there they were on the ridge, and they were in a perfect spot if I had just wanted to jump out and take a shot, but I didn't feel good about it. I just felt like I'd be too rushed, and got to crawl through a fence and do everything right. So I let them pass again, but we know where they're at.
What does your son all hunt now?
Oh, we went to Alaska 3 years ago and hunted moose together, and we both got a nice big bull moose out in Alaska. I got mine on like day 3. He got his, I think, on day 7. He got a much bigger moose than I did. I was just happy to be done with that. It was hard.
Moose hunting is hard.
Oh man, in Alaska, that terrain with that muskeg, that stuff, you sink in about 6 inches. So now you got to pick your foot up 6 to get over it, another 6 to take a step. And I'm short, so it's like marching everywhere you go. And it just wore me out. And
you're hardcore.
I'm just getting too. I don't know. I'm glad I got a moose because man. First day, one guy told me, he goes, I don't see how you're going to do this. It's tough out there. And I looked at my son and I said, did he just call me fat? Rock made a remark that I won't repeat on but I think he kind of did. But yeah, he hunts everything. He likes to bow hunt. He really wants to go to Africa. I've been to Africa and he wants to go with me, but he wants to bow hunt. And I'm afraid he's going to be disappointed because bow hunting there is not, I'm not an expert on Africa. I know a lot of people who've been there a lot, but the places I experienced for the bow hunters was pretty much high fence, just because of the opportunity and the stationing. But, he's really a great bow hunter, and he's hunted everything. He shot everything with his bow at this point, except an antelope, I think. He got a bear with his bow and elk.
Wow.
He's pretty much got everything. He's done really well.
Did you teach him the bow hunting?
No, I didn't. We had another close friend whose son was doing bow, just archery in 4-H. And Rock said, I want to do that. I'm like, all right. So I took him down to our local Yellowstone Gateway Sports and let him shoot bow, and he really liked it. So we hooked him up, and he's been through many bows since because he was only 11 at that time, and he just really likes it. He likes that kind of hunting, and when we come to rifle hunting, he likes to reload all his own ammo, and that stuff is just too tedious for me. I don't care. It's like, here, I'll just go buy mine. I'm good.
Right. Did you guys do you and your son do a lot of upland bird hunting?
We have only been upland bird hunting once together in North Dakota. And it was funny because he lived there. He worked in the oil fields, and we and all of his friends went out pheasant hunting. And I have a Benelli Super Black Eagle, and I had been in Texas in March of that year hunting turkey. So I've got all my pro stuff on. I've got my Badlands bag, and I've got my Benelli, and I've got everything. And I couldn't hit a dang thing. And they all made fun of me and said, well, you look like you know what you're doing. So I was like, I'm a good shot. I don't know what's going wrong. So I went and we went to had something to eat, and I was sitting there thinking about, well, I had my turkey choke in. Well,
Oh no.
So I changed
Right.
chokes, and it was all a whole new ball game. All of a sudden I was hitting birds, and it was great. Yeah, it was
Right.
I've never seen so many
Makes a difference.
pheasants in my entire life. North Dakota and South Dakota are crazy pheasant places to hunt.
My mind was blown. I went pheasant hunting with some friends on private property 2 years ago, and holy cow, there were over 100 pheasant down in this kind of like an old railroad way.
Oh yeah.
And but the thing is once one gets up, then they all get up.
Yeah.
And they take off that opposite direction. But yeah, it was just like, this is crazy stupid. I've never seen this amount of birds in my life.
It's so fun to see them when they're like that. Running
It
through the
is.
trees. It's like,
It's
oh my God, are
incredible.
those pheasants? Yeah. Well, I need to go down the other one. They're going to fly right over me. Yep.
Right.
And those North Dakota
It's
kids, they've been
incredible.
doing that all their life. And I'm standing there like, what? Because they're just everywhere. Just shoot. Okay.
Yeah.
But I couldn't hit anything till I changed chokes on my shotgun. Well, duh.
Ugh. Too
No,
funny.
and that's
So-
about the only upland game we've really done together. He's
Okay.
mostly big game. He's not even into fishing it like I am. He could care less. Just likes to hunt big game. And
Yeah.
go.
So when I talked to you a couple of days ago, you were going to go hunting for
Turkey
sandhill cranes.
and sandhill crane.
Turkey
yeah.
or cranes. Yeah. Did
Yeah.
you get any luck with that?
Well, I went out and I took a swing at a turkey with my bow and missed. And then, of course, they're off. And then we got some rain. And I started investigating my tag a little bit closer because, we can't shoot here in the Pacific Flyway. And the Central Flyway is just one county over. It's like 20 miles. Not a big deal. My tag isn't for there. It's for around the Deer Lodge area. So I'm glad I didn't make any crazy mistakes thinking I knew what I was doing.
Right.
Having never shot a crane before, but I really want one. The Ribeye of the sky. I really want to cook that up and see what it's like. But there's such a cool
because you
bird.
haven't had that before, have you?
I've tried a little bite, but it wasn't enough to satisfy my curiosity. If I hear Ribeye of the sky, I've got an image in my mind what I think it's going to be like, look like, taste like. I guess the meat is like really dark red, like elk meat, and I guess it's just yummy. But the piece I had was yummy, but it was just a piece. I need more than that.
Yeah. I'm curious to try it as well because I've heard the same thing. So, but let's talk a little bit about I don't know how deep we want to get into this of preparing game birds, but let's start out at maybe the species that have the dark meat versus the white meat. So first we deal with the slow twitch muscle, right? So the birds that are built for endurance and long distances, and they're the ones that are flying around full of the protein myoglobin and the mitochondria. And those are, what do we all have there? Ducks, geese, dove.
Well, for somebody who has a degree in biology, I really don't, I know the dark meat animals, those are the dark meat birds are all those that you just said, but I never got it down to the chemical part, which I should, because I think that is the most interesting thing about it. It's like fish have,
cool.
Like tuna have that white meat surrounded by the red meat, and the white meat is for constant swimming, and the red meat on the outside is for sudden burst of speed. And it's the same thing with birds, I imagine. that
Right.
the mussels that they use all the time are the darker and the lighter. And then some of those birds have dark meat everywhere because of the flight, which would be,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
that
I'm
is,
sorry, I kind of geek out over that stuff.
yeah. And I
I
usually
took
do,
way too many ornithology courses while I was getting my biology degree.
yeah. And I geek out about that stuff a lot too. And I just never
Yeah.
really thought about it with birds, with fish. And, like the heart mussel is built
Right.
different than regular mussel because it's constantly
Mm-hmm.
cooking. There's no grain. Um,
Right.
and I know those things, but when you started talking, I was like, oh yeah,
It's
oh
all
that makes
coming back. Yeah.
oh makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and
yeah, but
but that is the difference. So like because the
right,
slow twitch are the dark, yep, because
absolutely,
their muscle fibers are different. So
yeah,
and then with the white meat, it's the birds that are resting and then burst into action. So the
yeah,
muscle fibers are producing that glycogen.
and then
Um,
and then the turkeys with their running everywhere. They've got
yeah,
all that nice red meat in their hindquarters, and
and then the
yeah,
white breast.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not flying much.
Right. And for me, my favorite is the fast twitch birds.
Oh,
So
I
the
like the dark. Yeah,
do you? Yeah, and
I'm.
that's what I'm gonna love digging in with you today because for me, it's that taste. And so I'm
Yep.
really excited for you to teach me and my listeners some of your tricks, and I love that that's your favorite because I know you're gonna be able to nail this
But,
conversation.
well, the taste and the texture of the dark meat just is, since I was a kid, on chicken and turkey has always been more appealing. I like it not so dry. I like it
Hmm.
more of the smoothie muscle than like the breast meat when you cut it, and it's, even if it's
Right.
moist, it looks, I don't know, dry. Even if it's
Right.
even if it has a nice juicy texture and everything, it still seems kind of dry and has a different texture. But dark meat, I just have always liked that the best for any of the birds, and I
So
just go ahead.
yeah. No, I just gonna say, tell me how to make them delicious.
Oh, geez. I think you can make anything delicious. I never understood why people, when they hunt birds, just keep the breast and don't take care of the rest of the animal,
Hmm.
because you can do so much with it. I sent you that recipe for the poppers for grouse, and that's
Right.
usually I use the dark meat, but I'll use whatever because you can get few grouse and pheasant. The breast on a pheasant tastes different than most other birds,
Hmm.
and like duck. There's nothing like a duck breast. They're just fantastic, but you can't eat it the second day because then it's liver,
Right.
and I can't
So
quite figure out how that happens, but
so do you find that that's a common theme though with the dark meat birds in general that they are best to prepare same day instead of throwing them in the freezer and bring them out a cup, whether it be a week or months later?
as far as the breast meat on the dark meat birds, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that I do. I think that the like the legs and the thighs on any of those, you could throw those in the freezer and do a dangling or anything with it. But the breast meat doesn't have a bone in it, doesn't have tendons, doesn't have any of that other connective tissue so much. I mean, it does have, that cartilage down the middle and around the sides, but it's mostly meat. So you really want to use that first day, get to it as fast as you can, enjoy it when it's, at its prime. I really don't think, though, if you handle any kind of meat properly and process it and package it properly, that you're going to have a big problem with it. Some of it's just
Hmm.
better the first day,
Okay.
and the carcasses, gosh, if you're not going to use the whole bird and you just want like the breast, throw that carcass into a pot of boiling water with some veggies in it and cook it all day long and make a really good bone broth. All that collagen will come out. It's good for your hair. It's good for your nails. It's good for you. It's
Hmm.
just good stuff. It tastes good. It's good stock for soups.
Right. And that's what I thought you were going to recommend for um, the legs as well. So do you do
Oh,
the same or do you do something different with them?
well, if somebody isn't going to use the leg meat, the thigh and the leg meat and cook it up. I've cooked duck thighs and legs in a cherry mostarda. I make a flathead cherry mostarda, which is a whole different recipe, but I slathered that on and put it in the smoker for, I don't know, 45 minutes or so, kind of on high. Got kind of crispy on the outside. It was really yummy, really, really good. And I couldn't imagine why people were not keeping that part of the duck. So if you're not into that meat, just put the whole thing in there. Take the breasts out, use that meat, put the whole thing in the water and make a nice stock out of it.
Okay.
And then when you're done and you want to peel that meat off, I think you could definitely make like a tinga for tacos and like shred it up and put some sauces in it and make a neat little taco thing.
Sure.
Burritos, put it in some hash for breakfast. It's meat and it's got flavor to it. And, you've already cooked it up. It's not going to be tough. It's been boiled. It's whatever you've done to it. It's going to be good. I need to explore more on that, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, so a lot of people with the dark meat, they're putting them in milk baths. I think that's essentially to like draw the blood out of them. And what's your thoughts on the milk bath?
Well, every time I was going to make pheasant, I had a girlfriend that was like, "Oh, you're going to soak that in buttermilk, aren't you?" And I was like, "No." And she goes, "Well, I don't want it." All right. Well, I never have done it. I know my mom did, and I couldn't really tell the difference. But when you soak something in water or a milk bath, a buttermilk bath, it does draw out the blood from the meat, which if it is a strong, what is it? The sharp-tailed grouse has a stronger taste than other grouse. Yeah. And if
and
that
the spruce.
The blue. Yeah, the blue.
The sharp tail, the spruce, and the sage, I think they all kind of have that more sharp taste.
Yeah. But I kind of like that.
Okay.
I mean, I like knowing that, okay, this is grouse. It's got that sharp taste. But if that isn't for you, soaking it is a great idea. In buttermilk, milk, or even water draws out the blood. And a lot of the flavor's in the blood. I don't soak anything. I don't try and get the flavor out of it. I try to put flavor into it. I try to enhance or subdue or whatever it is, the flavor. Sometimes it's subduing. You just can't help it. You got to overpower it with something else. But
right. So you're not brining any of your birds then either?
I do brine them, but it's different because there's a lot of salt in there and a lot of sugar. Those things are going more in than drawing the blood out. When I brine turkeys or any of them, I will do it in apple cider with a bunch of salt and a different, I just start throwing spices in.
I'm curious. Tell me what you're all throwing in there for your brines.
I'll throw in some whole peppercorns. I'll throw in juniper berries, bay leaves, tarragon, oregano. God, I just said that like I came from Europe, didn't I? I'm watching too many European things. And the star anise. I'll throw in one piece of cinnamon just because. A bunch of oranges cut and squeezed. I'll take a pomegranate, cut it, and then squeeze the heck out of it and put it in there. I like to use kosher salt, the big chunky salt.
Okay.
And then get it stirring. And I'll brine some, like a turkey for Thanksgiving. I'll brine for 2, 3, 4 days.
Wow.
And
that sounds amazing.
They are. It's pretty amazing what it'll do. It just really kind of holds that. The flavor goes into it a little bit, and it kind of holds the juice in. I'm not sure exactly if that would work on everything, but it really works good on turkey and grouse. Now, a whole pheasant, I would love to do one with lots of, like an orange, maybe orange and rosemary and pepper, and probably just about the same way, actually. Now I'm thinking too hard. Now I really want to go.
No, I love where you're going with it. So let me ask, because a friend of mine, he does the bird bird. Ugh, he does beekeeping. And he just sent me a fresh jar of honey. So have you ever used honey in any of your bird recipes?
I use honey in so many things.
Do you?
I have a kind of a collection of honey and salts, and I really like the infused honeys, like or the ones that come from lavender fields. You know, if there's a lavender field by or sweet clover, that honey's taken on a whole different flavor, and I love that. I did a sage honey dish with wild hog, and I used a lavender honey, and I used wild lavender in it and sage, and it's just really the flavor is really delicate. Especially like I'll put it in a marinade, especially if it has something like a soy sauce base, and I always use Bragg's amino acids. Not sure why, just makes me feel better. I like it better than soy sauce, and if it calls for brown sugar, I will almost always use honey or pure maple syrup. But I just did a thing for a Halloween deal that needed a glaze on it, and I just glazed it with Mike's Hot Honey that is infused with jalapeno. So it gives you a little bite there too. Yeah, honey is great. The natural honeys, and my favorite thing about honey is you can set it on the counter for I think a gazillion years, and nothing will go wrong with it. Crystallize a little.
Yep.
So that's kind of magical in our little animal kingdom.
So, like with a pheasant breast, what would you do? How would you prepare that with honey?
I made a really good one that is got a little sage, fresh sage in it, butter, and honey, and that is pretty much it. I seared the breast on each side till it was like just crispy, so it was very hot flash, and I made a butter. Probably took a stick of butter and, probably just as much honey. It was a while back when I made it. And then threw in a leaf of sage and let that come to a bubble, and brought the sage out and put the breast in there after I'd seared it. And about the only thing it needed after that was salt and pepper.
Very neat.
Oh,
when you're preparing food, because you say that with the sage and the pheasant. So, Eastern Montana, we're finding pheasant and sage.
Yeah.
And when you're preparing some of these wild game meals, do you find yourself using some of that similar vegetation to complement your protein?
Well, on the pheasant, yes, but other things, sometimes I wouldn't use sage because they've been eating so much sage that they already have a sage flavor. I haven't really noticed that in pheasant.
Okay, so you can overdo it then, like if you were to prepare a sage grouse, since that's their main diet.
Here's how I kind of decide what I'm going to make on anything. Whatever species it is, I find that they taste different per area because of what they're eating. So if I were to get a sage grouse over in Eastern Montana, and then I got one here, I would take a piece off of each one, like a small sliver, and cook it up real quick and analyze the flavor and decide, wow, what's that taste like? Wow, does that have sage in it already? Okay, we're not going to use that. That's kind of how I start with every piece of meat that I try and, make something really good with, because you never know. Like bear, I thought bear was gross. So I was going to make it good if it killed me. So I was going Thai red curry, and then I cut a little slice off, fried it in bacon fat with a piece of garlic. And I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. I can't ruin it in this Thai red curry when it tastes so good just like that. And the same with if I was going to make a sauce for a grouse or a pheasant or anything, if the flavor of the meat is already great, just make it a sauce to enhance it, not to cover it up or, make it okay. Because some, we might as well face it. Some animals didn't have a good death, or they didn't grow up eating good food, and they don't taste quite like the ones who died quick and easy, or grew up living in canola fields and things like that. They just ate a different diet, and they do taste different.
I mean, you have a really meticulous palate that you can notice those differences. That's amazing.
I kind of think if people spend time, I've been lucky. I've had all kinds of different things in my hands that I could mess around with and taste test. And I spent a lot of time growing up thinking, God, there's got to be a better way to cook this, because I just had some down the street at the neighbor's house that was the best meat I ever ate in my life, but it wasn't cooked too well done, and it wasn't covered up with gravy, and it was meat and potatoes. It was a steak cooked medium rare with good spices on it. It was yummy. So I started messing around with, game meats, because, even in beef, grass-fed, corn finished, Wagyu, they all have a different flavor, and they're basically the same animal. Well, game meat, everybody wants to know how to get the gamey taste out of game. Well, it's game. It's supposed to taste gamey. And each animal has a different flavor. Like antelope tastes way different than elk. Elk tastes way different than whitetail. Mule deer tastes different than all of them. Thank God we know that difference. And birds, I can't even believe the difference between a breast of a pheasant, a breast of turkey, and a breast of grouse, and a hun. If you had all three of those laying out in front of you and forgot about the size difference, just looked at them, they all look different, so different. And they're all our upland game birds. And then when you taste them, they all have such a different flavor. But you don't want to cook them. That's a fine line, slippery slope with these birds too. You don't want to cook them. You don't want to eat them raw, like medium rare, like a duck, like you would a duck. You want to cook them to medium or near medium, and let them set and finish cooking so they're nice and moist, because they will dry out quite quickly.
Right. Do you notice a difference when you're preparing game birds, whether you're plucking them or cutting?
Well, if you don't leave the skin on, you're taking away any little bit of fat, natural fat that animal will have, or that bird. So I guess it depends on you whether you like duck fat's great. Frying something like the goose, you can take that. I have the best recipe for goose breast, but you really want to have that fat layer on there from the breast of the goose with the skin, and use as much butter as you can on a cedar plank, and put that on there with the breast side, with the fat side up, so it gets nice and crispy from the heat, and then the charcoal on the cedar plank. Put a lot of butter on there because it needs a lot of butter, and then when you pull it out, that butter will really help it slide into the garbage can, because I don't think that goose is the best thing I've ever ate in my life. So you really need help sliding that into that garbage can.
You really had me going there.
I know. Well, sometimes. Yeah, but with ducks and pheasant, I really think that keeping that skin on is great. Okay. Turkey, it is if you're going to do it whole. I've never actually plucked a turkey to this day. Okay. I walked into our garage. I remember when I was really pretty little. I was probably 6 or 7, and they're all in there, and they're like plucking birds, and they'd been pheasant hunting. They had all kinds of stuff, but more than anything, all I saw was feathers and garbage cans and people with feathers going everywhere. And the moms were like, God, we're never doing this again. And the men were like, got that. And that never happened again. We never plucked birds in our garage ever again after that day. There was still a lot of bird hunting, but everything was just kind of skinned out. Mm-hmm. But I really think that if you want that additional flavor of the bird, or not so much game meat, but birds, I think they've got a thing going on with their fat, and it's connected to the
so
skin.
keep that skin connected then while you're preparing it.
I like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you get that extra additional little bit of grease for cooking too.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with duck fat.
All right. So in college, I learned in one of my swine management courses that if you stress a pig, like even while it's being loaded up to go to the market, that it could really taint the meat, and just from that little bit of stress. So with your palate, can you tell the difference in of the game,
Definitely.
whether
Oh,
what's that?
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. I just recently was in Texas with Outdoor Solutions doing a bunch of commercials for YouTube, and they had an axis deer that we were going to use. And I've had axis deer from Texas quite a few times, and it's very tender, very flavorful, very, very yummy. It's one of my favorite types of meat. And it was backstrap both times.
Mm.
And I made the same meal out of the same thing. So I was making the Wellington. So I made this Wellington out of this backstrap off of this axis deer that they'd gotten. And I cut it for the picture, and I took a bite for the YouTube thing, and I'm chewing it away, and oh yes, it's so good. Yeah, oh boy. And as soon as we got done, I was like, this animal did not die nice. And they're like, how do you know? And I go, 'cause any animal that is delectable and tender, and you take the most terrific piece of meat off of that animal, and it's as chewy and rubbery as that is, that animal had a hard way to go. Well, they'd gotten a doe, and they didn't. It got shot, and then was wounded, and it went along. It got stressed, and you get all that extra adrenaline going through them. Like antelope, if you shoot them and they don't even know you're there, it is a whole different meal than if it's not traditional, but it seems like it here in Montana. There's the hunt, the chase, the kill. There's the antelope. Oh, there they go. Let's go get them. And off you go. And then you go get them, and then you shoot one, and then you get home, and it's like, wow, I don't know if I love antelope or not. And then you're just like sitting there, and you see them, and you shoot one dead on the spot. Best thing you ever ate in your whole life.
That's so interesting.
It's crazy how interesting some animals too. If like I shot a pair of David's deer down in Texas, and they kept telling me that if it's a good, clean, fast shot, this will be the most tender animal you ever had. All right, well, it got shot, and then it got there was a buck. It was a doe. It was a cow, actually, because they call them cows. And anyway, the male came up, and he was trying to fight her when she was down. She's wounded. So the guide went up and shot her again. Then she got up and walked, and then she wouldn't die. And it was just the worst thing ever. And none of us are proud of it at all. We don't have anything good to think about it. We shouldn't even talk about it. But it happens. In hunting, it happens from time to time that you have one that. So we get the backstrap out, and we're like feeling it, and we've decided that, oh, this is going to be okay. This is going to be fine. Well, between taking the backstrap out and taking it to the kitchen to prepare it was probably 3 minutes, and rigor set into that backstrap, and that was all she wrote.
Wow.
It was, no longer a delicious piece of meat.
Could you tell by just looking at it before you even cooked it up?
I'm not sure I could. I really don't think I could. I could tell by pinching it and poking at it, definitely by cutting a piece off of it and tasting it, the texture and the flavor, definitely. But I really don't think I could by just looking at it.
Okay. Gosh, that's so interesting.
It'd be nice if you could, because that'd make things a lot easier. But no, I really don't.
What about, do you know anything about the kind of same thing for birds? Does that apply? If, a lot of times ducks are wounded, right? Or pheasant are wounded, the bigger birds. And do you think that there's a difference in taste with those two that wouldn't have that immediate fresh kill?
I would think so, but with, you're shooting with shot, how many times are they getting shot out of the air and hit the ground dead?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're usually flapping half of their way down and or on the ground, and then the dogs get them and bring them over. And by the time they get to you, most of the time they are dead.
Right.
But I don't know. It'd be hard to say. I don't know. I
Okay.
haven't really thought about it with birds because, they fall from there. They're still flopping. I know when I kill a big game animal and
Right.
it goes down that it's done.
Right.
It's still not trying to run away or laying there looking at you.
Mm-hmm. Right. So when you have company over or when you're at hunting camp, what is one of your main go-to meals, whether it be game bird or big game? What's kind of like your special dish?
Well, at hunting camp, it's kind of funny because a lot of those guys and some of the outfitters do not enjoy wild game. And if the hunter has gets an animal down and it's hung for a while, like a day or two, they offer it up, that's great. Not a lot of them offer it up. And I'm certainly not going to take out, half of an animal just to feed 15 guys that I barely know my really good meat. But they will always bring in the heart and ask the cook to cook it up, and I will always gladly oblige. I am not a master on the liver. I need to get better on the liver because some people really enjoy that. I'm just not a big partaker in that.
Mm-hmm.
But the heart is a really good thing to bring in. There's so many things you can do with it. If I was making a dinner for friends, most of my friends will tell you that I love to do the Wellington. When I got my moose, I did a big Wellington dinner for friends. I usually like to do, but I do an individual one. So everybody's got their own little mini Wellington.
I don't know what a Wellington is. Explain that.
Okay, so Wellington it's from the backstrap.
Okay.
So you've got your tenderloin, you've got the best part of your animal. And sometimes they take like the middle part of it, which is like the Chateaubriand portion of the backstrap of an animal. And then there's all kinds of different ways to do it. There's how I do it and how you're supposed to do it by a recipe. And you're supposed to slather it up with yellow mustard. Oh God, I just don't do that. And then you make a Xcel out of mushrooms and butter. And I do that, and you coat it with that, and it's very thick. You make a paste out of ground mushrooms or very finely chopped mushrooms that have been sautéed in butter and till it's like a paste, and put that around it. And then they'll take some prosciutto and cover it with that, and then they wrap it up, and this is your whole backstrap. And then you wrap it in a puff pastry, and you cook it. And then it slices out and it's perfectly medium rare, and you've got all these beautiful bites and you've got all this beautiful stuff. Well, I don't know why, but yellow mustard just doesn't sound right to me on that particular piece of meat.
Right.
That's what I think of you put on a hot dog. So and this is just my way of doing it. What I do is I'll take a medallion and you sear it on all sides very quick and very fast, very high heat. And then I've made my mushroom mixture, and I'll put it on the top and the bottom, and I'll take a square, because you can take a full piece of puff pastry, cut it in 4 pieces, and each square is good enough for one. Put a blob of your mushroom, put your meat down, put your mushroom on top of that, and fold the corners up, and then fold the other pieces up. Now you've got the ugly side with all these, where you folded it all up, where all the seams are at, and you flip it over and do an egg wash on it and cook it at 420 for 20 minutes, and it comes out perfectly medium rare every time.
Oh my gosh.
And everybody gets their own little, this little Wellington, and you can cut
amazing.
pieces. It is really good. And it's kind of one of those meals. It's not that hard.
Right.
It's really easy. It's really tasty. It looks special. Or I'll do the backstraps with the rack, a crown of backstrap. So each side I can get about 8 pieces of backstrap with a bone in it. and I'll cook that whole on a smaller animal like antelope and deer. And I'll cook that whole and give each person 2 to 3, sliced rack of, venison. And it's just really good. Do a nice demi-glaze with that. Oh, geez. So good.
Sounds amazing.
I know. And I've got
Are the back straps your favorite part of an animal?
God, they absolutely are with the bone in. Absolutely. Okay. I can't even deny it. The inner tenders on the inside, that tenderloin that's on the inside after you've gutted your animal and it's hanging, that right there is probably the most tender piece. Some people don't even know about it. They ignore it. They forget about it. They leave it. Oh, I can't even believe it. There's really not enough for more than 2 people, maybe 1. They're very small. They're very thin, but they are like butter. They are so good. But there's not a lot there. You can't share it.
Sure.
So the backstrap, yeah, but you can do so much with even the shank. You can do so much with a shank. You can do the osso buco, and when you've cooked it long enough that all that collagen comes out, you've got this really beautiful, shiny, glossy gravy you can make to go with it, or just an au jus that goes with it, or you've got this really great broth that every time you heat it up, it's already naturally thick, and when it's in the bowl in the refrigerator, it looks like a big old glob of jelly because there's so much collagen in it. But you can do so many things with just the shank. I kind of find there isn't I just did a shoulder on my deer. I never left the shoulder together. Getting a flat iron steak that's big enough for more than one person off a deer is like a miracle. So I just left this whole shoulder together, and I roasted it low and slow with nothing but fresh herbs and spices all ground together with olive oil smeared all over the outside. And I just cooked it really low and slow all day long. Well, it was fall off the bone. It was juicy. It was tender. It was delicious. And it was just the shoulder. So you can take any piece of meat and turn it into something spectacular. Trophy hunting is in the eye of the beholder, and everything that ever comes through my door, I don't care if it's a doe, I don't care what it is, you're going to make a trophy meal out of it. And that's the part that I keep going about. Your rack on the wall, and I'm laying here on the couch looking at a whole bunch of them right now, feeling kind of guilty about it. But, there's the trophy hunting. Yes, we've got our big racks, but when it comes down to it, you're going to eat the meat off it. And if you're just going hunting for meat for something really good, you want to get a cow elk. You want to get a doe. And God forbid, preferably, you might even get a calf elk, because there's really nothing quite like that in the whole wide world. They are, it's like...
It's just more tender.
Well, it's like veal and lamb. It's the younger version of the adult, and they are way tender. They're brand new, and they are very, very good.
Mm-hmm. What about, I do hear often that people love the hearts. How are you preparing a heart?
Well, it depends on the size of the heart. Like on a bird heart, dove hearts, any of the bird hearts, if you have a good harvest and you have a whole bunch of them, I would just clean them up, put them in water real quick, cold water, squeeze them around, get that little clot that might be inside out, run some water through there. You want to get that out of there. And then I'd string them on a skewer and maybe slather them with something yummy, or even marinate them in some soy sauce and honey thing. We're just can't even say it right now. What's this here sauce? Yeah,
it's hard to say on a good day.
What's this here sauce? Put some of that in there. Make the sauce that you really like and marinate it up, and then put those on the barbecue and you get these little pops of love. God, they're just so good. Those little bird hearts.
Pops of love.
Yeah. And they're just this little bite, and they're really good, and the texture's really kind of neat. Now, on a larger heart, I've done all kinds of things. Deer heart, I like to try and get you cut the top part off, it's fatty, and get the insides out, get that septum out of there, get the heartstrings out of there. Get those kind of things that are connective tissue on the inside out. And I've stuffed it with stuffing, like a cornbread stuffing, and then turn it upside down in a cast iron pan and cook it on the Traeger or whatever you have that's a smoker, and cook it low and slow with the smoker going on, and bring it out, and then you slice it, and you've got these slices of really nicely done, and I don't mean well done, I mean nicely done heart meat with a nice little dressing on the inside. Or on an elk heart, I will trim it down, slice by slice, trim up every bit of white, where you are down to nothing but pure red meat in slices, and do it chicken fried steak like, and cook it like chicken fried steak and dip it in cocktail sauce, or make poppers out of it, or just put it on the Traeger and cook it. One of my favorite things to do is when you have those strips of the long pieces of pure red heart meat, slice up a bunch of peppers and onions, and take a can of the stuff called El Pato. And there's a yellow can or a green can. Use the green can because it's not as hot. It's jalapeno, and you just need 1 can of that. Throw it in a pan with all of these really lovely pieces of veggies and meat, and saute it up and make a fajita out of it. It's delicious.
That sounds amazing. Right.
It is delicious.
And are you starting a hunting camp soon, or when do you get going with that?
I go in next Wednesday. The general season doesn't start till next Saturday. But I'm going in on Wednesday, just get things organized, see what I need, make pies, make whatever I need to get done. Okay. It's kind of nice to get there and get a little familiarized, get yourself settled in. And then it's 5 weeks of nonstop through Thanksgiving. I've worked for a lot of different outfitters at hunting lodges and backcountry. I've cooked for backcountry pack trips in Yellowstone Park. And
fun.
and I cooked a little bit in Alaska. And the outfitter that I went with, Lazy J Barrow with Michael Copel, those guys I cooked while I was there in camp as a client. The cook had been there for several weeks and needed a day, and so I cooked. And I was supposed to go to Alaska this year, but because of the COVID, with that same outfitter, and cook for them August and September for sheep camp and moose, bear, moose, grizzly, caribou. I was pretty excited about that. Kind of bummed.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's when I had actually talked to you last too, because we were going to have you come be our chef for our women's hunting event. Yeah, and you said, no, I'm going to be in Alaska.
I'm going to be in Alaska, and then that didn't happen.
Yeah. Bummer. Well, maybe next year.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to next year. And, but it's a long deal. If you cook for the same outfitter through bow hunting, and then you've got bow hunting ends on Sunday, and you still have a little bit of antelope left. So if you've got an outfitter that just keeps busy, you'll start like September 5th, clear through the weekend after Thanksgiving, and it's a long haul.
Yeah.
You don't get much time off.
Yeah, it's busy. And at hunting camp, you had mentioned the favorite there amongst everybody is usually your grouse poppers.
Yeah, everybody really likes those.
and you shared that recipe with us, so I'm excited for the listeners. But tell us a little bit about it, because they're out there to hunt big game, right? And then they're coming back with some grouse just for you to make these up for them.
Well, if they accidentally get a grouse, if they get one on purpose, they accidentally bring it to me and say, can you do something with it? And I make grouse poppers. Then they're like, on purpose now they're hunting grouse. Right. I mean, if hunting is slow because the weather is too nice and the elk aren't down, they'll be shooting grouse just so I can make those grouse poppers. But going into that's usually during more the archery season. But the big game guys during rifle season, they're going in and they're not even looking at grouse. They could care less. Mm-hmm. But I will make them for them guys just because. But I'll use chicken, or I'll use turkey, or I'll use whatever I've got. Sometimes because I marinate the meat first, whatever it is I use, and I don't use that big of a piece, like the size of a quarter,
Okay.
about as big as the end of your little finger,
Are
and
you
put
just
that
using
in
the breast meat for that?
I'll use whatever. I
Okay.
usually with the grouse use just the hindquarters and
Okay.
the thigh and the leg, because somebody always wants to do something different with the breast, and those guys usually took the breast and they just were like, what do you want? You want to do something with this? Sure.
Mm.
Don't throw it away. Do
Mm-hmm.
not throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
And I get kind of bummed actually when they bring in a heart and they're like, can you package this up for me to take home? Sure. Want me to cook it for you? No, I'm just going to take it. All righty. I'll do whatever. I don't care. Those guys, some of them, they don't know that I can cook wild game.
Mm-hmm.
And, when they find out, though, then they're more generous with whatever it is they get.
Right. What else are you up to besides hunting camp? I feel like you got a lot of things going on this year, and because I mean, usually with the COVID, everyone's kind of laying back on things, but here's Margie Nelson just picking up her game.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because here I was, we're on lockdown, and it was kind of it was like, wow, this is so weird. I don't know what to do with myself. And I was just still cooking and still putting things on Instagram. And I had one gal, Felton's Angus Ranch, get a hold of me, Susie, and she's like, I need somebody to take pictures. And I go, I do it with my cell phone. I don't know what I'm doing. So I kind of blew her off. And then Outdoor Solutions got a hold of me and wanted me to be part of their team from field to table. Sure, I would love to do that. That's great. And then a guy named Christopher Douglas, who's a great Western photographer, great Montana photographer. And I know of his work. And I was like, wow, he's getting a hold of me for what? And Boot Barn. So I did a collaboration with him on a deal that he did for Boot Barn and Shepler's. And after I did this meal that had to do with Montana beef, and it was for Easter, they asked me if they could buy a photo from my Instagram of a taco thing that I'd done. And I said, well, and they offered me a certain amount of money. And I said, yeah, for that, I'll do you one of your very own and make a whole different recipe. So then I started doing a deal for them every month. And right now I'm in the middle of doing their Halloween thing that I'll have done by tomorrow to them. And it's just been a really a neat deal with them. Yeah. If you go on the Boot Barn blog, almost every recipe except one booze recipe at the very end is mine. Okay. And, they don't say by the Wyld Gourmet. They don't say by Margie Nelson. And I really don't care. But you can get a lot of recipes, and very few of them are wild game. Last month I did a bunch of wild game. I haven't even looked to see if they're up yet or if they did their wild game thing. I'm doing that. Outdoor Solutions, Miss Pursuit. I'm a blog contributor. This next one I am doing a deal on. I think I'm going to do it on the Shanks and Instapots.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. I better get busy figuring it out.
Are you using a lot of the Instapot for a lot of big game?
Instapot is a really neat thing. Yeah. My only problem with Instapot is it's good for like a family of 4, 6 and up. Unless you are just cooking meat quick and fast, they're just not big enough. But you can put in a shank that'll fit, or ossobuco, they're already cut. And instead of having to cook them 4 to 6 hours to get them fall apart, you got a 45-minute cook on that, and you can just do so many wonderful things with a piece of meat that has been cooked to its perfectness. We did some down in Wyoming with Outdoor Solutions. We did the axis deer shanks that had been boned and did them in an Instapot. And then I made, what did I make? It's leaving my head right now. With the noodles, geez. Mushrooms and noodles and sour cream and a gravy and the meat. It's not a Swiss steak. I could just shoot myself right now. It's escaping.
It's okay.
I've done a little bit of done a little chemo in my life. I got a little chemo brain.
Aw.
But anyway, we did all that down there, and it turned out fantastic. One of the guys did a Mississippi pot roast, where you take the whole jar of peppercini and a packet of you take a packet of ranch dressing, and you just put a roast in there in the Instapot,
nice.
and that's pretty much it. And a stick of butter, and it just comes out fork done, and just absolutely beautiful and tender. Yeah. So
Amazing.
I love the Instapot, but it's not good for a great big group of people.
Right. That makes sense. And I noticed you leave the bone in a lot. Like you do a lot of preparing with the tomahawks.
Yes, I love that.
They look amazing. So why do you do it that way? Is there a reason?
Well, I think that there's a lot of flavor that gets lost when you take the bone off. There's a lot that's inside the bone. You've got the collagen that's connecting it. You've got the marrow that's on the inside. Not that the tomahawk is something that you're probably going to experience that in, but your shanks and things like that, you will. The tomahawk, it might just be because it cooks a little different, and it just looks so cool to eat something with the bone in. Might be my deal. I'm not exactly sure, but I really love the way the presentation, the way that it cooks. I don't think that the flavor is probably enhanced that much more by the bone, because you do cook it so much quicker.
Okay.
But it sure does look neat.
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah, it gives you a handle.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Absolutely. A little Paul Bunyan handle there.
Yeah.
What about, do you get into any of the pairings of wines or liquor with your meat?
Well, I think whiskey goes good with most everything, and tequila goes good with everything that's a taco.
Okay.
So I do like my whiskey and my tequila, and I love my beer. I'm not a great wine person. I'm a little bit allergic to it.
Okay.
I kind of, every once in a while, I'll experiment with a bottle of wine and cooking, and I'll pour some in there, and I think, well, I might as well drink some of it. So I have a glass, and if I don't break out in a rash, I'll drink some. Very seldom do I find a glass of wine that I absolutely love, but when I do, I can never remember what it was. I got to call somebody and say, what was that wine? It was so good. Because
does it matter if it's red or white, or what do you?
I'm kind of a red wine person. I don't like the sweeter wines too much. I don't love the rosés. But I haven't had a really good one, I guess. I need to experiment a little bit and find out. The Chablis are a little too sweet for me. And it's funny because when I was growing up in high school, you'd have never known I didn't like wine, because a bottle of TJ Maxx and, some of that Boone's Farm Annie Green Springs, I really like that stuff. But that's
the stuff that that's the stuff that we snuck out of the house.
Right?
High school was the Boone's Farm.
Oh yeah, Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill and Mountain Dew was always one of my favorite things.
Oh yeah.
Gross.
It is gross now. At the time, it was so scandalous.
Oh yeah. Oh,
and
absolutely.
So you just drank it anyways. It's like the college nights and the beer kegs of, I don't like beer, but I'm gonna drink it.
Right. But there is, and I apparently don't like beer because I drink Miller Lite on ice.
Oh,
so
gosh. I mean, I mean, you might as well pour yourself a glass of water, Margie.
I know.
My goodness.
I might as well. But well,
I love it.
I can drink whiskey with the best of them, though.
There you go. That a girl.
Yeah.
No,
I cook with wine quite a bit.
Okay.
I like it. I like it gives it a more robust flavor. But when I'm making something sweeter, speaking of Mountain Dew, if it calls for a simple syrup and I don't have any, or it calls for something, I don't know, a liquid,
like a sweet,
put some, even pour some water in it. I have had many times where I've been cooking and making a jam or a jelly or any of those kind of things that I like to put with meat, like lingonberry is excellent with wild game, like a lingonberry jam, so excellent with wild game. But if I think that it needs to be, not thickened, but watered down a little bit, I pour Mountain Dew in there.
Interesting.
And that happened by accident. I was like standing there with Mountain Dew and going, how can this be bad? And poured some in there, and it's like, well, it's not. So that's what you should use.
And that's what makes you and your cooking amazing, because you experiment and you make it work. I love that.
I have problems with recipe making because, sometimes I don't write a whole bunch of stuff down. And in the last 6 months, I've been pretty good about, because I'll taste something and go, oh, it needs more of that, and put it in and forget I did it. Yeah. Or I'll make something that's really good. And when I write it up on Instagram, like what I did, I didn't put the amounts because I don't remember, but I put every ingredient in there. And when I go back, I'm like, God, how much of that did I use? How much lavender did I use in that? I don't know. Did you put salt and pepper in there? Must have. And I kind of have to start over. So well,
I would imagine now this year that so much is picked up for you and you're getting all these new things like deadlines and recipe requests. I mean, it's got to be a bit of a turnover for you. Right. Well, you're going to be muffled at the end here, but let's, okay. How can we find you on Instagram, Margie, and follow some of the awesome dishes that you're making?
So you can find me on Wyld Gourmet on Instagram, WYLD Gourmet, or on Facebook under Margie Nelson under Wyld Gourmet, or just get on the internet if you don't have any of those, and go to my website at wyldgourmet.com. That will link to Skills to Skillet, which will be the recipes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Margie. I really appreciate your time and information today. It was awesome.
You're so welcome. I'm so glad we got to talk. It's fun talking to you. Now I'm going to have to go back and look up the biology and the chemistry of the dark and the white meat, because I was like, yeah,
it's good. It's fun. It's kind of fun to put all the different pieces together, and especially when you're cooking.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Bird Dog Babe podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and learned something from the content, please share it with your friends. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on whichever platform you're listening from. Check out the show notes for links to references from this episode, as well as info on how to connect through Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you're loving this podcast and want to support the production and content, please consider becoming one of my Patreon patrons. Being a patron connects us more on a personal level, where I'm able to help answer questions and give advice. My husband William and I have bred, owned, and trained AKC Master Hunters, Field Champions, NAVDA VCs, and AKC Show Champions. We're excited to not only share what we've learned, but also listen from previous and future episode guests for additional content. Go to patreon.com/thebirddogbabe and $5 per month and you're in. Through the Patreon platform, 5% is donated towards conservation, and an additional 5% is donated to the AKC Canine Health Foundation. Until next week, bird dog babes, keep them versatile.